Hey there, Amber Housley here, and welcome to another episode of the Bloom and Grow Show. We are talking all things retreats these next couple of weeks because it is the retreat season. It's the live event season. I'm seeing lots of my friends in the business world and in other industries go and attend lots of events this time of year. I think that the spring and the fall season are the most popular times of year to host a live event or a retreat. So it's been really fun seeing everyone going and traveling on my Instagram. Like I've been lots of people that I follow, and then also hosting my own retreats and getting ready for our upcoming Inspired retreat in April. So this is the retreat season, the best time of year. And going along with this series that we're doing this month and telling stories of other retreat hosts and things they've learned along the way, and me sharing, more of my background and some tips and strategies for you who are maybe considering hosting a retreat or live event for your business. I think you're going to enjoy today's episode. So today's episode is a fun one in that I wanted to go and share some personal stories, kind of like some highs, some lows, some like not very like favorite fond memories, and then also some special ones that I have learned from hosting retreats and events for more than a decade. And events, like I should tell you, if this is your first time ever listening to me, I've actually been hosting events and doing event planning for the better part since I was like a teenager and college student, all the way back to my college days when I was in my sorority and helped all with rush and recruitment and those events. And then I went on to work for several big marketing firms and agencies in the travel, the hotel resort industries, casino industries, and then on into my wedding industry career. So just want to bring you up to date of like my life story there in a sentence or a paragraph and to where I am today, where I've been hosting events for more than a decade, of all shapes and sizes, workshops, conferences, all-inclusive retreats, one-day VIP day retreats, multi-six-figure sales conferences for other businesses and brands. So I've seen it all. So I wanted to just like kind of cherry pick just a couple of stories today of some highs and lows I had. And this was also inspired by a recent office hours call that I hosted for my Invite and Delight program. So every month I host an office hours call where students who are, planning their retreats or hosting and their events, they can come and ask me anything. They can, pull maybe something from the program materials that they need help and support with, or they just come and they just want to like brainstorm or get coaching or get advice on a particular, question or problem or idea, whatever it is. And I make myself available every month besides our Facebook group. So what's funny is that one of the questions I had from one of our gals, Stephanie, she was asking me like kind of my thoughts on a particular topic. And it was funny because like I thought to myself, and I answered it very thoughtfully. And then I said, you know what? I was like, I don't know how to answer what it is you're asking me because I don't do that particular thing. And I only teach what I know, what I've done myself. I tend not to teach things that don't have experience in. And she, appreciated my response. And I kind of gave her all the angles of how I would do it, how I would approach that. But like, as I left the call, I thought that was something that was very powerful that I noticed for myself and admitting that. And it felt like it came from a really good place. Like it was like, oh, yeah, like that's how all educators should be, right? That's how all people who are in a position of authority or expertise, they should teach things that they know, right? Or like at least if they don't know it, they've experienced it in some way, and so they can kind of, come from those thoughts. They're not teaching theories and things they've never executed themselves. So with that, I wanted to come to the table and be like, okay, let's share like some of the good, some of the bad, some of the ugly that I have experienced in my event planning experience and world. This isn't an exhaustive list. This is just like a few things that I picked out kind of in some key areas. I think of the areas of just logistics. I think of managing expectations of my attendees. I think about creating a cohesive experience, an exceptional experience. Like I'm really big into the experience, both before, during, and after a retreat experience. I'm also thinking about the bigger picture of my business and how retreats and events fit into that. I'm thinking about the community that I create from my events. So I'm thinking about a lot of different things. And so I was like, okay, I was actually sitting down with Lauren on my team and I'm like, okay, let's just spitfire some ideas here of some things that like have been funny or some not so funny challenges that have happened recently, or maybe a couple of years ago. Maybe there's stories I always go to that I draw from my experience. And when I teach in my program and in my trainings, like, let's go and pick a couple of those ones out. And so this is in no particular order. This is just things that I've learned along the way that you can just put in your little back pocket if you've got a notepad and pen. And if you are enjoying this and you're like, oh, Amber, I know I'm going to want more. I have to tell you right now, I'm hosting a free workshop series called Mastering Retreats. You can go over to amberhalsey.com/retreat workshop. You can go and get registered for them. Don't worry if you can't join us live for one of them. You'll get access to the replays. So all free, all valuable content, no pitch, like just want to teach on this particular topic. And let me know if I can help support you down the road. So all right, let's get into one of the first stories, okay? I've shared this story before, so you may have heard it before, but I always think back to one of the very first Inspired Retreats, which, by the way, I've been hosting Inspired Retreat for over 12 years now. We just celebrated our 12th birthday. I'm saying that with like a little bit of not 100% confidence because now the number 14 is standing out at me. I'm hoping it's 12 years and it's not been 14 years. I feel like it's been 12. We just celebrated it literally a week ago, but you know, I've got a lot of numbers and information coming at me every day. So I get it a little mixed up, and I don't use I use an outline for my podcast episodes. I don't use like a very detailed notes. So maybe I could have looked that up. Whatever. It's been a while. Anyway, so one of the very first Inspired Retreats, when I moved to the 4-day all-inclusive experience that I host out at an amazing property called Evans Mill. It's about 45 minutes outside of Nashville. One of the things I was really into was getting a lot of like corporate sponsors. And back in these days, because this was like a 2015, I want to say 2015, so almost 10 years ago, we were like, it was a much different world, right? Social media existed, like Instagram did exist, but not to the format and the usage that we see today. Blogging was much more popular then, especially among influencers, creatives, it was all about the blog. And corporate sponsors really liked that, right? Because their corporate sponsorship stuff would like last longer, right? When people would share about it socially, but also on their blogs. So win-win for marketers back then. Well, as part of that, I wanted to have some sponsors for my event. And one of the fun things that we wanted to do, which I could tell you also that timeline, my very first one in that format, the 4-day, 3-night, all-inclusive type experience, I just filled it to the brim. Like, in fact, I found a schedule. I was cleaning out my office the other day, and I keep, like 1 or 2 pieces of kind of everything I've ever created. And one of those was the schedule from one of those early Inspired Retreats. And oh my goodness, I looked at it and I was like, oh, that's so much stuff. Like, what a, I don't want to say logistical nightmare, but like, what a complicated logistics I had done for myself back then of just the moving of groups. And we had on, like, we could say the campus of Evans Mill, there's multiple places that you could host, kind of breakout sessions and workshop type experiences. And I fully used the property. There's 3 different places and 3 different things could be going on at the same time. And so you kind of like picked almost what your schedule was going to be. And I had speakers in all different places. And so it was very tight as you moved from place to place, from thing to thing. Anyway, I just went off on a tangent. That's a learning point for you right there, is like, how can you simplify things? How can you give things breathing room? How can you give things more weight instead of like as like much variation as possible, which is what I was kind of doing. It was a lot. But back to my sponsorship story. So one of the things I also did to fill the time was every night there was like an activity, like a very involved activity. Okay. That's not what I do today. And one of those was a table decorating contest where we had a bunch of amazing fun craft supplies. One of our speakers, Kim, she had partnered because she was really in the crafting industry then, blogging industry, parties, that sort of thing. And so she got so many wonderful sponsors to like sponsor basically one of her experiences where she was going to lead everyone in a contest where we had a timed dinner table, or it wasn't, because it was after dinner. It was like I think actually we would sit at the tables maybe the next day and they'd be all decorated super cute. So you did it in an inspired theme. So you were given colors like lots of pinks and oranges and yellows and all these different things and supplies and craft supplies. And you at your table were timed in like, say, like under an hour to like decorate your table. So we're talking like centerpiece, name tag, placemats, like any fun crafty details you wanted to do given the supplies. And then the winning table would win this really amazing prize I'll tell you in a minute. So anyway, so the activity happens and everyone loved it. It was a really good, involved, very fun thinking, like out of the box. And you really saw people maybe who weren't as creative leaning, got to like get support from people who were. And it was actually a really, really fun game and activity to do. And at the end, the winning table, because one of the sponsors was Cricut, which if you guys are familiar with those vinyl, trimming printers that are very popular today. They were pretty new, almost 10 years ago. That was the giveaway. So you got a like $300 craft machine Cricut as your prize if you were part of that winning table. So generous, so amazing, right? The attendees were so excited. And then I remember getting and reading one of the attendee feedback forms because I am really big into surveying my retreat attendees. And one of them was like, oh my goodness, it was so generous. Like, I love this Cricut machine. What I didn't love is that I didn't have room in my suitcase for such a large gift, which was so nice. However, because I was showered with gifts like the whole week, and this big one, I had to pay $50 out of my own pocket, like for, to check basically this additional piece of luggage at the airport. And so she's like, that was kind of a bummer. And I'm glad she shared it. And it just like made me realize, oh, like I need to make sure that I am encouraging my attendees to leave room in their bags for, gifts and surprises. And also making sure that like as a host, I'm very thoughtful in like the size and scope of the gifts we give and if things can be packable. So generous gift. They loved it. Good lesson for me, as I just shared, of just like what I can do better for next time. Like that's what I'm always thinking of. All right, next story. Let's talk about let's go over a little bit more into experience and logistics. Let's talk about logistics, okay? This is a more recent one that happened, and this was from me wanting to have leaner expenses on a more recent event. So I host an event called Bloom and Grow Live. It's a different type of event. It's a retreat / conference. And the reason why I say that is because it's a retreat in that it's multiple days. So that to me kind of constitutes a retreat. It's intimate, but it's not that intimate like Inspired Retreat. Inspired Retreat is maybe 24 women. Bloom and Grow Live is like 70 women, right? So much larger, 3-4 times as big, right? Bigger setting, but still intimate. And it's not hundreds of people. So that's why, and there's also not like dozens of speakers or anything like that. So that's what tends to be a conference. So it's like kind of a larger scale 2-day event is what I'd call that. Anyway, one of the more recent ones that I hosted just this past September, we were trying out a new hotel place. And part of it was I wanted to do like a nicer like cocktail hour beyond the one that I was hosting as like a mixer on the first night. So this was kind of the day 2 or first full day evening experience that we called, kind of a rooftop, like cocktails. And I originally, because we had to keep expenses down, right? Because we were obviously wanting to be profitable. Like, hello, that's number 1 priority. But number 2, I was like, I want to try something different, like, because I am the experimenter. And I had hosted, let me take you back a couple of years previous at a gorgeous hotel called The Graduate, the same exact event, Bloom and Grow Live, much, much higher food and beverage minimums at this particular hotel. And as part of it, we did something called a Bloom Ball. So you could tell like that was the Bloom Ball, which maybe from that language alone, you can tell like you're going to dress up. We actually had people come in, various, levels of gowns and dresses and that sort of thing for a fun party, or jumpsuits, that sort of thing. And we had like this amazing DJ. We had, I think, like a 1-hour open bar and some really heavy hors d'oeuvres for a meal. So it felt like almost like a 2-hour, 2.5 hour-ish like wedding reception style. Okay. That's what that experience was. And I was like, okay, budget's not going to allow for that type of experience. It's been a couple of years. Like, let's try something different. Let's just do like a more like nicer cocktail experience. But let's try to save in some areas where we can. And one of the places that I tend to save sometimes is in alcohol, because thankfully, I think this is a good thing. Like the world has shifted and not as many people drink as much alcohol as they used to do. So like a 1 hour open bar for everyone, like that's a really large expense. And so I was like, oh, maybe we can do drink tickets for like their first drink. And then if they want something beyond that, they can go ahead and do a cash bar beyond that. That felt like a really like good, even exchange for experience. And originally I was like, they have some speakers there. I have a great playlist. Like, let's just do the music ourselves. Like, I think we could iPad this. And I don't say that very often, you guys, because I am very big in hiring professionals for things. However, I was like, I'm guessing that we'll probably have like 40 people max that come to this cocktail hour. Let's go ahead and do, our playlist, whatever. Well, what the hotel didn't really say up until the week, like I'm confirming everything, like basically running through the whole order, you could say, of what the experience is going to be at the hotel. And I'm just like double checking everything that we've already, been in the affirmative in my knowledge and in my memory since we first started talking and chose this particular hotel. One of them is that there was a Bluetooth like control you could use to the speakers in the event space. Well, that very last week, what they failed to mention is, yes, it existed inside the space where we were going to set up some hors d'oeuvres, like a charcuterie table and some waters and that sort of thing. But there was not access to speakers outside that room, which was basically on the roof, like the second floor roof. And they failed to mention that. And I was like, well, this is going to be kind of lame. Like you're going to be in this like really pretty, outdoor viewing area, but like you won't hear any music. And I didn't want to go like a boombox, like speaker. Like I was like, no, this isn't great. So I kind of scrambled at the last minute, went on like one of the wedding websites and was like, who can I find like to just do a 2 hour cocktail hour music? I'll give a playlist, right? And so I really didn't go down the route I would have normally done for the DJs I would. And just all this to say is like, I tried to DIY it. The DIY didn't work out. And then my backup solution wouldn't have been my first solution. And so I did get a DJ. I paid probably bottom dollar for it, right? And that's kind of the service and experience I got. And thankfully at one point, so let me back up. So DJ comes, sets up, we tell them we have a playlist, like stick to it, stick close to it, but it still wasn't quite what we were looking for. And at one point, most of the music they were playing were love songs that you would hear at a cocktail hour of a wedding reception. Like we're talking like love anthems like Celine Dion, Variety, like Endless Love, like just not what the party upbeat atmosphere we were trying to create for our ladies. At one point, at least about an hour in, some of the attendees there went up to the DJ to make requests, and then they started like making the experience, and they were loving it. They were lined, like they all just wanted to dance. They wanted to line dance and do different ones, and they got their answer. And so they had a great time, but it just like reminded me, one, I should have double confirmed the Bluetooth speaker situation weeks earlier. I had known in the initial planning, I thought we were good. We were not good, right? That was the first one. Second one, you get what you pay for. You get what you pay for when it comes to that. And third, like just be so clear about what your expectations are with your service provider. And like the DJ, I could have been even more upfront. Just play the playlist. Like, don't even try to be creative in this. Like in this situation, when I had the DJ that I really loved and invested in that was at the Bloom Ball, he could have creative liberties because I trusted him, right? Because it was a sure bet. I knew I know what he was like. It was good, right? And I was paying for a different service level. This other one, we needed to be just more explicit in exactly what we were looking for. All right, let's continue on with the thread of managing expectations and logistics, and in that bucket before we move on to the next one. And this is an early example too. We're going to go way back in time to one of the very first Inspired Retreat that was at Evans Mill. And you see they have unique accommodations there in that they have these creekside cabins that are basically split in half. So there's an upstairs room and there's a downstairs room, okay? And that's like the main attendee accommodations. There's also a lodge that I stay in that also has rooms and stuff, but that's not relevant for this right now. So the Creekside cabins, those are the original like cabins that have been probably there since, I don't know, maybe like the 90s or something like that. The property is 100 years old, but these Creekside cabins are more newer. And one of them, or not one of them, the upper room of all of those individual Creekside cabins have the ability to have a sleeping loft. And so you go into these rooms and they're like rustic, but they're not rustic. Like they're not summer camp. Like they're still an inn or like, kind of a lower hotel room, you could say, where they have like a nice king bed that can be split into twins. And then there's a private bathroom and they've been updated. So they're great. But they're in these same rooms because they have very high, lofty ceilings. There is a ladder up to a queen like size loft that's like up there. I had stayed in one of these rooms. I actually have stayed in them twice. So like I'm fully like familiar with them. Well, that very first inspired retreat, like I was coming hot out the gate. Like I was coming out like this was a big dream of mine. I had big expectations. Like I was taking, after doing multiple 1 and 2 day workshop experiences that didn't include accommodations. Like I was taking this to the next level, right? I had to go big. And as part of going big, I really felt like I had to accommodate all budget levels. Okay. So because of that, I decided to create, I don't think I had private rooms. I don't think there was a single room option at that point. Everything was 2 to a room, but there were some rooms where you could buy a loft bed situation. And that was like the very lowest option, like buy maybe like $300, maybe even like $500. I don't know. It was cheaper. Okay. It's been a while. Anyway, and I sold out of those. Like, in fact, I probably sold out of those first because that was kind of, I don't know, like if you think about 10 years ago, I was kind of changing the game in my industry. I was like one of the first to come out with this all-inclusive experience that was so different than anything out there. And the price tag and the investment was more than like maybe others in my industry, right? And so a lot of people took advantage of that loft space. Anyway, so we have the loft space. So that means some rooms are 3 to a room and then other rooms are 2 to a room. Well, the very last night, which that was a huge inspired retreat, I want to say we had up to 48 people on site. Like we booked it to the max, right? Everyone was double. Some rooms were triples. Like there was at least 48 people there. And so as I was saying that is like, it actually, when it was that many people, it was my first time hosting. I had assistant, I had a support. It still was a complete success. There was like other things I didn't have a lot of like, what do you say? Like not knowledge isn't the right word. Privy, like I wasn't privy to how everyone was experiencing everything, you could say. And so right now, when I host Inspired Retreat, we are under 30. Okay. I want to say like more closer to like 28 is like kind of our max now. And it's because I really get to thoughtfully move around the room and move around among the days and know everyone's name, right? I know everyone's name. I know how they're like, what kind of experience they're having, what questions they have. Like I really get to know everyone. When there was 48 people, I didn't get to know everyone. And so there was one cabin in particular that I feel like was a domino effect. I'll still never know to this day, but I do remember, I don't have still the attendee feedback it was, but they left a night early. So, and I feel like one of them in the group was just high maintenance. Like, I'll just be honest, high maintenance. And I usually tell people who come to Inspired Retreat or come into my community, like you can be high maintenance. In fact, like I am kind of, you could say high maintenance, right? I have a lot of expectations. I have a lot of nice things, right? I appreciate things, right? However, like I remind people when they come to my events and my experiences is that like we are down to earth people. We are humble. We are gracious. We are kind. Things take a little bit slower in the South, which is like, 20 years ago when I first moved here, I was like, why is everyone talking so slow? Why is everyone moving so slow? Like, so I tell everyone like that come to my experiences from experience. Like I know what it's like to come here in the South and see how things are just a little bit different, right? Than other places maybe in the world or in the US. And whatever it was in this particular cabin, they weren't as satisfied with their experience, and they were expecting, I think, a traditional like Hilton hotel room. And one of them, even though they bought the lowest option available, right, They bought one with a ladder that they had to, like, it said all of those things, but clearly it didn't meet their expectations. And then another thing I didn't think of, I'll tell you, that I see now and why we don't have 3 to a room anymore, is just the logistics of having 3 people in a room with one private bathroom that has like the shower, bath, and the toilet, sink, all that is all in a room. So like you really have to take turns, and 3 women doing that, especially when they're getting ready for dinners and things like that, like not as like a great of experience. And so they left a day early. Maybe not all of them were unhappy in the room, but like the other one just felt like they had to go along. So I kind of feel bad for the other 2 or whatever it was. But the whole like lesson taught me is, one, like I think having 3 different like options for sleeping room arrangements isn't the best sometimes, because that also creates decision fatigue for your buyers on which one that they're supposed to buy. I'd say that. And they're always going to like feel, say they don't buy like the best one, they're always going to feel like a little bit less than. So I really like what I do now, where there's just 2 options. You either get a shared room with one other person or a private room. Like, and like you pick for yourself. And I usually encourage people to do the shared room because they can meet a new friend, right? Like a new buddy. And those who really need a private room because they just want that, like for a rest, like for their own like privacy, or they need like an extra break or want some alone time because they've already got people around them at home all the time. Who knows? Whatever it is, they can do that. And I feel like that's been like a really good experience in only having those 2 options versus this third one that just puts too many people in a room, right? And I was trying to make sure every investment option was taken care of. Everybody could make it, but really they weren't going to have the same experience. They weren't going to have a great of experience as the other people. And I really lead with that a lot now. I know what's best. I do, because I've done this enough. And if you're in one of my programs, I'll tell you what's best, right? I'll tell you, you come to me with what you're thinking and I'll be like, like, have you thought of this, thought of that, right? But I know what's best, and I know what is best for my attendees and how they're going to get the best transformation, how they're going to have the best experience, how they're going to get the best return on investment. And you really have to trust yourself in that decision making. And I promise you, the attendees will sometimes tell you different. They'll be like, oh, like I would have liked this, or oh, like you really shouldn't do that. Like I really would have preferred that, like you not doing that, right? And that's their story, right? That's their own, they're coming to the table with their own experiences, their own traumas, their own whatevers, right? And you get to go and own your own and what you think is best. And I think that's actually a really good spot. I'm actually going to popcorn around now to the next lesson learned here. And this is actually thinking about how your retreat and event isn't just like, you're not just selling that. Okay. That's one of the most important things you need to realize, especially if you're going into it with some fears around, am I going to be profitable? Like, am I going to make all my money back? Like, this is a lot of expenses. This is a big risk, right? Is always thinking about how this fits in your overall business strategy, how this fits in your overall value ladder and in all your different offerings, because really people can come in at any point into their journey, like in their own personal journey and where your retreat meets them. And they may need to get more support from you afterwards. They may need to get just a continuity offer afterwards, right? So there's so many different things besides this just one retreat or live event that I want you to be thinking about. I can think of the one feedback I got from someone who was like, oh yeah, like on day 1, this was like Bloom and Grow Live, day 1, yeah, like you kind of introduced everything, all your different offers, but I really I think you could have waited on that. Like, I think you could have sold on day 2, right? And I'm like, thank you so much for, I wanted to say to them if I was sitting across, like, thank you so much for your input. Like, I'm glad you thought, like, I'm glad you felt comfortable enough to share that with me, but if I was sitting across from them, I'd say, actually, that doesn't work because not everyone can make decisions like in the moment, right? And I would never want to put pressure on my clients and my customers and my students to like make some kind of like super fast action taking, like decision when they need time for all of that, right? Like, I need to share information and have them process that or go home and think about it and talk about maybe with their partner or other people on their team if that's a good fit for the next step in their journey. So I actually have to be sharing information throughout the experience to make that make more sense. And I know that from experience because I have sold well over $100,000 in sales for my events, just different events, just for my own. This isn't talking about any of the clients that I have produced events for. This is just my own. And so I know from experience what I do works by sharing a little bit at different times along the way. And there's like much more I could like go so much more detailed to selling at events and what that looks like and how to make it not feel icky and weird and all those sorts of things. But just I want you to know, and like the lesson learned, like if I had listened to that one attendee who gave me that feedback and like took on that trauma and been like, oh, she's so right. Like, who am I to sell anything? Who am I to like ask these people? They've already spent so much like on their expenses to get here and their time. And like, that would just be way too much pressure. I don't want to be sleazy, right? Like if that was my script, like that would not be helpful for anything that I know that I have tools and resources and things to help all these people with. Like I would be doing a disservice if I didn't share about these things while I had them, while I had their attention, right? Where they weren't at home and, getting all these other inputs from all these other places, right? It's my duty to share these things because I have things that help people. So that's really important for you to know is like you're going to get attendee feedback, but you get to be the ultimate decider of how you implement that and where that makes sense. All right. Well, since we're talking about pricing, we're talking about budgets, right? Let's talk a little bit more about some other things that you need to think of, right? One, like I want to talk about like just a little bit of logistics, and this is kind of like twofold here of funny stories that happen. So I feel like I keep going back to like the original inspired retreats, but let's go back there again, okay? So one of the things I felt like I had to do in the beginning, and I think I did this the very first two all-inclusive inspired retreats, was that I was so concerned about people getting out to Evans Mill, which it's about a 45-minute drive from the Nashville airport. So it's like, it's not super close, but it's also close enough. Okay. But you can't take Ubers there. Like they just don't work. Okay. And so I made it, it was a huge budget line item. I was still profitable those events, but it was a big expense to do this. I got private transportation. I got these 2 shuttle buses that picked up at the airport at set times. And then you'd get shuttled to Evans Mill and they'd all arrive. And then like it shuttled back on Wednesday when it was done. Well, even though you can have the best intentions and tell people when to fly in, right? The airline industry doesn't care, right? There's flights get canceled all the time. Flights get delayed all the time. And I remember this one particular bus of someone's flight got delayed. Maybe it was like 2 different people. And they got like, I think on the Facebook group and asked for the bus to wait, or they reached out to someone, whatever it was. Like I clearly wasn't on these buses because I was at the event site, right? But the buses were there and they had pretty strict instructions. Like this is the cutoff time. Like we need the attendees to arrive at this time. So if they have not arrived by then we need to go, right? Well, there were some super sweet speakers that were on that bus, and they wanted to like help everyone, right? And like make sure everyone was taken care of. And I appreciate that. Like I want everyone to feel taken care of, but I also knew that I had very strict like guidelines to everyone. Like this is the provided transportation. If you want it, you have to arrive by this time, which therefore you should probably maybe get a little bit earlier flight to make sure you get there in time, right? And so one of the buses, I think, came, but the second bus did not come back on time. In fact, they were over an hour later than everybody else. And it was because one of the speakers on the bus had made the executive decision to hold the bus up and wait for these people, which was kind in its own way. But then logistically, it was not great on our end, just of a whole bus of 20 people coming an hour later beyond everyone else, and they're tired and they're hungry and they're grumpy, and like how you are when you get off flights and buses and trains and that sort of thing. And it was at that point that I was like, we're not providing transportation anymore. Like these are grown women who are fully capable of troubleshooting and finding their ways to our event space. Like Google exists today. It existed 10 years ago, as do, private car transfer service, rental cars that people can buddy up with. And after I made that decision, it was like the best decision I could have ever made, where I was like, oh, good. Like people can take care of themselves. What a concept, right? And sometimes we forget and don't trust that. And we sometimes go over and beyond to bend over backwards that could really end up getting us in a tight spot that's not going to make a great experience for everyone in the end, right? If something goes wrong. And so that was a lesson learned in that particular of just over providing things, right? The second one was like when travel plans do go wrong, the last thing you want to hear as an event host is to hear the stories yourself. Like you're like, oh, like I want to help you right now, but I'm also thinking of like 567 other things right now, right? Like I want to give you support and concern and suggestions to help you with whatever logistic challenge you have right now, but like I'm not in the right brain space, right? And so it took me like learning that after kind of the first couple of workshops to then pinpoint and have a front facing person from the team handle that, like maybe an assistant, a concierge, whoever it is on your team that maybe so many weeks out you make them available so they can field all the requests, they can answer the inbox, they can answer text messages or voice boxers, whatever it is. So it's not on your mind, it's not even within your visibility, because you usually have dozens and dozens of other things that are much more important, like use of your brain space and your emotional capacity, than it is to help these people through some of their travel woes. And so I like firmly believe in you finding someone, and there's scripts you can give them, and there's like operational processes that you can walk them through to just make it feel like really good and really helpful for your attendees. And it's a win-win for everyone because people are taken care of and your brain space is protected and you're able to just like be your best self and not troubled with other things that are happening maybe over here. Speaking of troubled things, and then I'm going to get into a couple fun things before we wrap up here. Speaking of like, you know, having your emotional like capacity depleted, there is a proven fact. I'm there is no scientific study, but I'm just going to claim it right now for you that people within that want to host events and retreats, we are empathic people. So we just feed on the energy of other people. We may be introverted, we may be extroverted, but I do believe we're like highly sensitive people, and we pick up on the energy and feelings of people around us. And I think that's, you don't even have to host events to be that type of person. I think naturally the women and the people that I draw into my communities and programs are that way as well, if you're a listener. And where we just like, because we so want to seek out thriving businesses, joy-filled lifestyles without sacrificing our family and our friendships and the things that are important to us. Like that to me tells me you are a sensitive creature. And you pick on the energy of other people. And so being around so much people, you have to really remember to take some moments to like restore your energy, even in the middle of events. Okay. And so I didn't do that very well in the beginning because, as I told you earlier, those schedules were jam packed. Oh my goodness, filled to the brim, boom, boom, boom. Right. And that would leave me so exhausted and depleted at the end of the day. And somehow I would still manage to stay up till like midnight, like wanting to stay up and have a glass of wine and banter with some of the speakers or friends or clients, whatever it is. Right. Now I go to bed a lot more earlier now, I can tell you. But I remember specifically one of the Bloom and Grow live events where we hosted it in this barn, this amazing event barn. I've actually hosted it there multiple times. And it was an unseasonably cold snap that came in that November. And the heater was not turned on the night before because the barn wasn't being in use like over the weekend at this space, at this farm we were at. And so it didn't have time enough for this crazy cold snap to come through that nobody expected. And the barn wasn't like properly like at a good temperature, like when we started day one of the 2-day event. And it probably was in like the 50s to 60s. Y'all, it was cold. It was really cold because it was like, 19 outside. It was crazy. And so, people were wearing their like coats at their tables to stay warm. Well, I had a wonderful outfit and dress I wanted to wear, and wearing a coat did not go along with that theme. And so I was like, I'm going to brave this. I'm going to brave this. I don't need to be properly like, my temperature is going to be just fine. I'm going to be moving around. I'm going to have my adrenaline going. I'm going to be great. Well, I did. And I did great. It was wonderful. But I remember the exhaustion I felt when I got back to our Airbnb that evening. I like fell apart. Like I was shivering. I was crying, like privately. I wasn't like crying, like, having that ugly cry in front of the team, but I just had to like send myself to bed. Like that's what I had to do because I think I took on the energy. I was cold. I was like my adrenaline, like there was so many factors that were happening that were up against me. And I didn't have any built-in breaks like during the day to like not be teaching, not be talking. Like I wasn't smart enough with my content back then that it was a lot and my body was like falling apart. Thankfully, I got what I needed. I got an amazing like extra like 12-hour a night sleep, got like tea and, had my energy, my vitamins, like all these things to help support me. But just that exhaustion and that crying and that like breakdown, like I get like mini versions of that now. I've never had that happen to me again. And I think probably because nothing has ever been that cold before or since then. But now, like every now and then, like I even at a recent retreat for the Coterie Mastermind last week, I remember we had a break where all the attendees went off site to go get lunch on their own. And I just looked at my team and was like, hey guys, like I just need to go in my room and just lay down. Like I was like, I'm fine. I promise you. I know I don't look fine on my face right now. I was like, I just need to fill my tank up for a minute. So like if y'all could go get me some food. I'm going to go lay down for like 30 minutes and like, I'm probably not going to sleep, but at least just like quiet, like just close my eyes and lay there and get my energy back. That will be enough to sustain me. And sure enough, it worked like magic. Like I just know myself now for that. All right, let's go and like move away from all that ugly cry talk, right? Let's get into some fun, okay? Like I want to tell you a couple of ups. Well, there's so many ups. Like I could gush all day long. And there's a reason why I've been doing this for so long is because obviously I love it. Obviously I'm profitable. Obviously like this is work that I want to continue doing and I tell others about. But these are some of the things that like have felt really good like when I look back on it. The first was creating a special ceremony within the retreat to like signify like a transformation. Okay. And so one of the ways we do that in Inspired Retreat, which spoiler alert, if you are going to the upcoming Inspired Retreat and you don't want to hear any of this, then you should turn it off now. I don't want to ruin things for you, but dozens of women, hundreds of women have been through this now, is we have an induction ceremony into our Sweet Life Sisterhood. And my Sweet Life Sisterhood is the name of our community. Like you're an honorary member, you come in, you're a sister. Okay, that's how this works here. And we do a special little ceremony, and it was actually like born out of the idea of when I created our manifesto, when I created the name, the Sweet Life Sisterhood, where we were all creating our own success stories. We're all after our own individual sweet life success story. Like, we want to live our version of the sweet lives day in and day out in our businesses, in our families, in our lives. Like that's where it came from. But as I told you earlier, I was in a sorority in college, and it was such a special, meaningful time for me in those years of my life that I almost wanted to create a sorority of business sisters. Like I felt that same bond that was happening very early on, like with my clients and my customers. And I really wanted to foster that. And I wanted to put more meaning behind it. And so I created the manifesto. We have a name, we have colors, we have like a drink, y'all. Like I really have gone just as it's unfolded naturally. I promise you, it wasn't like I got out like a worksheet one day and named everything. It wasn't like that. It just like unfolded. And it really went beyond myself. Like even at one of the Inspired Retreats, I remember Ashley and Jordan on my team, Ashley, one of the attendees. I remember they're like, we need a handshake. Like the Sweet Life Sisterhood, we need a secret handshake. And I'm like, that's amazing. Make it up, y'all. Like, I want to see it, And they made it. And I have like a little video clip of it that means so much special to me. And it's so fun. And it's funny. It's meant to all be done like in just fun, like not seriousness at all. And so we have a ceremony, but it's become really sweet. And the women who come like have told me how meaningful it is for them. And like, even though we're silly and we're having fun and like in all these things, and people can have negative connotations of sorority systems and fraternities and that sort of thing, like everyone comes to the table feeling really like this is so special and sweet and meaningful to them. And that's what it is for me. And there's so many that came in that were like, I always wanted to be in one. I always wanted to have a sister, or I always wanted this and that. Or like they'll tell me like, I've never had relationships with women, or I haven't had friendships with women. I always thought women were like enemies, or like, like I just like, because they had traumas, they had bad experiences, and like this changed it for them. And that means so much to me. Like that is so fulfilling and makes me keep on going, and we keep having fun, and I let it go beyond me, and I let the attendees have fun with it too. And I'm so glad like we created something, we made something special that was unique to us. And it is a really great memory. So that is an honest to goodness piece of advice that you can do, is like, what ritual, what special thing, what memory maker can you include in one of your experiences that's maybe like part of your story and part of your journey that you can share with others? The other thing that I think is really important is just creating fun in general. Like I've told you a little bit example of how we've done the bloom ball, and then we've done these elevated cocktail parties. Like more often than not, people, when they're coming to retreats and events, they're trying to get away from the day to day. And so what can you do to foster that? And so we have like at our, multi-night experiences, we are having like a slumber party atmosphere. We are having some games. We might have some dance parties. Like I find like I make it very optional. Actually, I take that back. Some of the parts aren't optional. I usually tell, especially the introverts, I'm like, hey sisters, I hear you. You're going to need a rest. You're going to need a break. Listen, I just want 45 minutes of your time. Like 45 minutes, you come in your PJs, and then your excuse for the rest of the night to go hang out by yourself, whatever you want to do, just come for the first part. Don't miss out on that part. And then you can check out after that, because I promise you it'll be worth it. And they do. They tell me every time. I'm so glad I came to that part, because they would have missed out. They would have had FOMO. They may have missed out on some of the stories or just like little things that happen along the way at these special times. So I usually ask like a minimum, and then you can go off and do your thing. But those who want to stay longer, I've got options for you, right? And I do think it's funny, like one of the more recent retreats I hosted, the mastermind at the beach a couple weeks ago. I wanted to play a game. There's a couple of games that we play. And they're like get to know you games. I should explain that. They're games that are like getting to know you, special, tips and tricks and that sort of thing. Like, so you can remember people's names and where they came from, whatever. The room wasn't really vibing. I felt like when I was about to like say, hey, can we play a game? Everyone's like, I don't know if I'm really into that. So I get on our Voxer channel, which is the way we communicate at the retreat. And I'm like, hey, whoever wants to play this game at this time, come on down. And sure enough, like 8 people who were not in the room were like, yes, we're totally going to be there. I can't wait. Don't want to miss it. And so it just reminded me of like, you got to go forward with it. We're going to have a game, like go and do it. Create the experience, create the fun. And usually the people will jump on the bandwagon too. The last thing I want to say before we wrap up is just creating an amazing experience is even better when people can share about what you offer for you. And so what I mean by this is that what I was pointing to earlier, we were talking about value ladders, and people can come in at any point of their journey and join you at one of your retreats, but they might need more support after, and it might need like more specialized support. It might need a little bit of help, and they just want to like stay in your world and your community and your atmosphere. And so I have been so pleased and satisfied when I go to Inspired Retreat and people are practically brand new to my world, and they're like, they don't know what the Blooming Business Inner Circle is. They don't know what the Coterie Mastermind is. What's Bloom and Grow Live? What are these virtual retreats, right? Like all these things that are part of the Amber Housley, scope of services. And it's amazing when other people at their table like tell this new person, oh, you have to join the inner circle. Like this is what it is. And they explain it, right? And they're like, Amber, go get one of those welcome kits. Like, let's show her what's inside it. Like, it is so satisfying as a host when people can articulate that, can be like cheerleaders, can be marketers basically for you, and they're selling your things for you. Like really, really amazing. But you have to equip them. So there's things that go into that to go and help make that really easy for them to do. And I could, again, spend a whole episode on sharing that. But that has been such an up for me, is like, how cool is it when it goes beyond yourself, like where, you love, your stuff works, your stuff's amazing, right? And could really help people. But then when other people vocalize that for you in front of you, or maybe like, down at another table, like they'll come up and say, oh, Jamie was just telling me about this. Like, tell me more, right? I get like such a warm, fuzzy, fulfilling feeling when that happens. All right, I'm going to wrap up today's episode. This one was a big one, but I hope you found it so helpful for any of you who are looking to get started with workshops, live events, retreats, conferences, anything for your business and brand. There are so many good little nuggets of wisdom tucked away in this episode, but I have so much more to share. Like I said, check out my Mastering Retreats workshop series over at amberhalsey.com/retreat workshop. You can find everything that you need to know. And if you liked this episode, please leave it a 5-star review and some feedback about what you loved about it. Share it maybe with a friend who's interested in retreats or has a business. I would be honored for you to spread the good word about our Sweet Life Sisterhood community. All right, friend, I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care. And wherever you are today, may you bloom and grow exactly as you are. Take care.